To truly appreciate the injustice of this situation, you have to understand that all of the crimes that were charged that day were based on the defendant's decision to defend himself and return fire.
In other words, nothing that happened before this moment was a crime or charged as a crime. Surely there has to be a process for the legal system to prevent an innocent man from spending a week in jail and 14 months on house arrest. Let's take a look at what the court wrote in its order denying the petition for habeas corpus.
The contentions raised in the habeas petition implicate issues of fact that are properly reserved for trial. The defendant maintains that the Commonwealth failed to establish the commission of any crime because of the defendant's constitutionally protected act of carrying a firearm, but the court disagrees. This argument overlooks the significant fact that the defendant decided to retrieve and carry said firearm openly on the heels of a physical altercation that had just transpired minutes prior. The decision to exercise one's right to bear arms in this specific context has the undeniable effect of signaling to a reasonable person that the defendant was attempting to revive and escalate the prior altercation, especially given the Commonwealth-friendly fact that firearms were not being openly carried by the victim at the time. At this stage of the proceeding, the evidence establishes that 1, the defendant instigated the shooting by introducing an AR-15 style rifle into the equation after the brawl had ended, and that 2, the defendant violated his duty to retreat at the point in which he retrieved the rifle, because he had already walked away from the alleged victims with his back turned to them, evincing a lack of objective fear and demonstrating an ulterior motive.
Everything about the court's analysis is incorrect. First, the federal and Pennsylvania constitutions protect the right of citizens to bear arms in self-defense. The point at which the defendant retrieved the rifle, he had no duty to retreat. He was on a public street. Also, there's a big difference between arming yourself in self-defense and shooting in self-defense. All the defendant did was arm himself. The defendant did retreat. He retreated 3 times from the brothers' assaults. This wasn't a brawl, as the court said in its opinion. It was an unprovoked assault. The first assault was on the sidewalk when the defendant retreated to his girlfriend's apartment after Orange Shirt sucker punched him. The second time was when Baseball Hat chased him down and swung a chair at him. And of course, what the hell do you think he's doing in the video that you're currently watching with your own eyes right now? He's retreating. Third, the law of self-defense is clear. Even if the defendant provoked the use of force against him, if he retreats, the opponent cannot continue the attack. The court's rationale is essentially that once the defendant retrieved the rifle, the brothers were authorized to do whatever they wanted. They could hunt him down and continue to spray him with fire, even though he has retreated 50 yards down the street and taken cover behind a parked car, all while pleading with them that he just wants his keys so he can leave. Over my objection, the district attorney refused to introduce the surveillance videos at the preliminary hearing, instead relying on the testimony of the brothers and the police detective. The magistrate held the charges at the preliminary hearing and held the defendant without bail. The defendant has a constitutional right to bail, so we appealed to the motions court judge, who again denied his bail on a theory that he is a danger to the community based on the charges. Eventually, the motions court judge agreed to release the defendant to electronic home monitoring or house arrest, which is effectively a pre-conviction sentence. For 14 months, he's treated like a convicted criminal. He misses family events. Right before the charges were withdrawn, the judge denied permission for him to attend his cousin's graduation ceremony. The defendant gets shot in the knee and then is able to flee from the area. He ultimately takes refuge in a stranger's home where the police arrive and arrest him and bring him to the hospital. 14 months later, all charges against him are withdrawn. Not a single charge was filed against any of the brothers.